What is a true story from your life that sounds made up? EF archived post. New comments cannot be posted and votes cannot be cast. T. Have a weird one. Many years ago, when I was in high school, I had a project to interview a real working scientist. Fortunately, my dad worked at our local university and knew a scientist working in a radiation lab, so I set out to interview him. The lab itself was very hard to find. It was in the basement of a building, down in behind the janitorial area, very dark, creepy, and isolated. Finally I find it. The scientist, an elderly man, this was in the early 1980s, was very willing to talk. In fact, he seemed quite lonely. After working through all my interview questions, he got to talking about his life generally, and gradually it turned to his experiences as a young sailor on board an escort vessel in the North Atlantic during the Battle of the Atlantic in W2. What I didn't know was that the fellow was about to expose some deep trauma that had been with him his whole life since then. As he talked, he got more emotional about the stress he was under, the endless storms, the ever-present threat of torpedoes, the lonely watches staring at nothing. Finally, he reached the climax of his story. According to him, on one of those endless night watches, he was visited by a friend of his on the crew who wasn't scheduled to be there, who had some sort of bone to pick with him. The two got arguing about this, and it ended with punches thrown. The friend hit his head on a bulkhead and went down, unconscious or dead. The narrator, in fear of punishment, pushed the guy's body overboard. It was night, in the North Atlantic in winter, with a high sea, and no one saw him do it. The friend was just listed as missing, presumed overboard accidentally, but of course he'd been murdered. T had no idea how to react to that. I quickly made my excuses and left. TLOR. As a kid went to interview a scientist for school. Got a confession to a long ago murder. When I was young, 8 to 9 years old, I loved to climb a very tall pine tree on the mountainside near my backyard. I climbed this tree almost every day because the view from the top was incredible. One day, I was climbing so I could get a good view of the sunset. When I was almost halfway up the tree, I heard a sound next to me and loomed over to see a mountain lion just chilling on one of the branches directly across from me, staring at me. My heart probably stopped beating for a minute. Lol. I just slowly climbed back down the tree and had a very paranoid walk back home. I work in a job where there is a lot of pressure to make connections and bring in money. Got an email from a random small company just before I went on holiday, asking for a Zoom call in the next few days. Decided that for once I was going to draw a line in the sand, and told them I wouldn't be available several weeks. Went on holiday somewhere 500 miles away and did some sightseeing. A few days in, I ended up at a bus stop in a quiet rural area, waiting for the bus back to my hotel. It is only one bus an hour and there is a while to go. But it is a nice day and I was enjoying being switched off from work, so I didn't mind just standing there. I look behind me and notice a building, which is in fact the exact company who had asked to speak to me. So, after telling them I wasn't available to speak to them online, I completely randomly ended up standing outside their building 500 miles away on the same day they wanted to talk to me, with some time to waste. I was on a boat in Colombia going from the beach in Cartagena to Tierrabamba. The motor died and we were drifting. Shit got pretty real. The swells were not enough to tip us. But with us being powerless, the boat was turned sideways and we were susceptible to the roll. We ended up eventually drifting fairly close to the island and there were very long piers. I saw that we might get close enough to leap onto it, so I gathered a rope up at the bow of the boat. The guy at the motor tried to tell me not to, but he was the guy who didn't have any plan for the motor dying. So fuck him. I timed a swell as well as I could, and jumped as powerfully as I could. At the time I was young and very athletic. I barely made it, but I landed on the dock. I pulled the boat in and the rest of the people were relieved and very, very grateful. They actually cheered. I felt like a badass and was on a high for the rest of the day. I've posted this before. At a family lunch I saw my uncle, through marriage, finish his food and then eat a large, crumpled up paper napkin. No one else noticed. No one believes me. They all think it must have been a piece of flatbread. It is infuriating. I know what I saw and the man did not wipe his hands and mouth on a piece of goddamn flatbread. The story of how I met my second and last wife. It was sometime in the late 1990s. And I'd been divorced for a while. I drank a lot of Mountain Dew and Pepsi. Started their Pepsi Stuff contest. One of the top prizes was a leather jacket. I'd never had one, so I decided to go for that. To enter, you had to sign up for a free Yahoo account and enter codes from bottle caps and cases. So I signed up for Yahoo. I figured that I might as well see what was on Yahoo. So I looked around. One of the things I found was Yahoo Personals, where people could post ads, including basic dating ads. You didn't need a. Most of them were free. So I signed. I got exactly one. Signed up for the paid account to look, just to reply to them. So I looked at some. I thought, crap, and that I could write a much better one. They had a 30-day trial up for Yahoo Personals and posted my ad. Reply. Apparently I wasn't that good at writing personal ads. She had also 30-day trial just to reply to me. We chatted on Yahoo for a while. She lived about 45 minutes from me, and we played some Yahoo games, talked on the phone, and eventually met, fell in love, and got married. It could be a Hallmark movie. She even had a loser boyfriend. She dumped when she started talking to me. And yes, I got the leather jacket. I still have it. Lucked out in a job interview. Got to the interview 15 minutes early and asked to wait in the hiring manager's office. On his table there were a number of pamphlets. I got bored and read one of them. The HM was a little later than expected, so I had about half an hour before the interview started. He asked, "What is it you think we do here?" and I recited the pamphlet. He goes, "That's a pretty good answer." I received an offer the next morning. 6 months in and I'm doing well. He finds the pamphlet. He asked me during my 1-year review if I read the pamphlet and I laughed. Confessed. And then he gave me a glowing review and a raise. I lived in the Congo for a year and me and some buddies hitched out to the coast for a few days. Then hitched back to Kinshasa. On the hitchback we got a ride with a UN Jeep, no. One of those all open, no top jobs? We were cruising 30 miles per hour on a dirt gravel road cut into a fairly steep hill. Off in the distant valley was a herd of wild buffalo, and the bull starting pawing the ground, from like 200 or more yards away. Sure enough, he charges and comes barreling up the hill. Me pointed at him and laughed at it. There was no way he could intercept us. And Sombitch. He got closer and closer and then bam. He had triangulated the angle perfectly. He hit us in the back panel and spun us around several times and we side crashed into the hillside facing the wrong way. But we didn't flip. Thank God. Because of the hillside. Nobody injured. As the dust was settling, we each looked at each other slack-jawed and in wild disbelief. The bull, who was now 50+ yards away from us, just shook his head. Had to hurt him as he hit square on the rear driver's side wheel. Then he trotted back down the hill to protect his harem. The driver produced a crowbar and bent the wheel well back as it was stuck on the tire. We went on our way. Made a house call for IT support to Don Cheadle's house and he said my shoes were fly. I dropped out of high school at 15. I bounced around in call center jobs with no plan and no prospects. One day I met a girl there and we became friends. She was an aspiring author. She said I seemed smart and asked me to help her figure out how to become an author, and she'd make me her manager and share the book royalties with me. I found office jobs crushing and really bad for my mental health. I was suicidal at some points. But the only thing that kept me going was helping my friend accomplish her dream. Fast forward 10 years. We're best friends. I helped her become a best-selling author. We've sold millions of books. We live up the road from each other. We're both happily married and I don't have to do any work other than help her with her books. I work under 10 hours a week. I won the lottery. Basically, that's how it feels. I went swimming at night in the ocean, and my money and debit card was in my pocket. When I got out of the water, my pockets were empty. I went back at dawn with a snorkel and found the card. Saw that shiny dove on the back in the seagrass, and even found a few of the bills too. I would have had no way to get money at all had I lost it. I was once on America's Most Wanted list with a $75 bounty on my head. My mom was estranged from her dad her whole life, but held on to a phone number that was supposed to be his. She finally worked up the balls to call him. His daughter answered the phone and told my mom that he actually died about a week prior. I was mauled by a jaguar when I was 7 years old in Mexico. My mom put crazy glue in her eye thinking it was eye drops, and my uncle stole our turkey out of the oven on Thanksgiving when no one was looking, lol. One summer, at the family cabins, we would ride our four-wheelers around, and when we got to one part of the trail, a raven would swoop down, grab the rear luggage rack, spread his wings, and enjoy the ride. He flew off as soon as you got to the end of the trail, and would stay on as long as you didn't acknowledge him. When I was 5, my brother and the other kids at daycare dug a hole in an old family cemetery, chucked me in it and left me there. I crawled my way out, told my parents, and they spanked me for lying. My brother finally told the truth when he was in his 49s, and my mom laughed like it was just something kids do. One of many attempted murder stories that my brother never got in trouble for. I accidentally cooked a turkey upside down, and it was the juiciest turkey I've ever had. I once had chronic muscle twitching and went to go see a neuroscientist about it to make sure my brain is all good. He told me to never get vaccinated, avoid all gluten, unplug my TV at night, 5 grams towers, and the government are trying to control me, and that he had his brain zapped by secret military police in Virginia in 1972, and he knows more than anyone, and I'm too ignorant to understand the vast esoteric knowledge he has bestowed upon me. And super intelligent beings are watching the human race at all times from space. I recorded our entire conversation without him knowing with my phone in my shirt pocket because I needed proof of what I was listening to this actual PhD licensed medical professional tell me to ensure I wasn't going crazy. I'm like, sir, I have muscle twitches, and he straight up hit me with, okay, cool. But, and then, starts this ramble. Part of me still likes to entertain the idea that he actually is a genius and that all that knowledge is beyond my understanding, but man, he really came off as a fucking lunatic. My grandma was half Romani, and I spent a large part of my childhood living with her in her van and various houses across the country. Some of them were abandoned, but we always managed to get utilities. GNA was a sleuthy squatter. I'm from the States, by the way.